Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forsythe. The string is stuck out here. We're going to be taking a look today, continuing the season preview series, looking at the New York Rangers. So let's get right into it. So the New York Rangers had a couple of losses this offseason. Not really anything big, which is good. Definitely a lot more adds than subtractions, but we'll get into that now. So Colin Blackwell, a pretty good forward last season for the Rangers, is no longer there. He is now a member of the Seattle Kraken, picked off in the expansion draft. Kind of a tough loss there, but not really that bad considering what the Rangers added back. On the defensive side of things, Tony DeAngelo was bought out. You knew that Chris Drury did not want to keep him around. Thanks, asshole. And then you got Brendan Smith, who I know Rangers fans loved Brendan Smith at the tenure there in New York. Signed him to a pretty brutal contract. He just was never going to live up to that deal. So now he moves on to the Carolina Hurricanes. Actually, both of those guys move on to the Hurricanes. So are they the new Tampa Bay Lightning, where they just take all the ex-Rangers? That's kind of what it's looking like. Looking at some of the forwards that the Rangers added, actually the pretty much army of them. You have Sammy Blais, who they acquired from the St. Louis Blues in a trade here for Pavel Buchnevich, who they lost, which I completely forgot to add Buchnevich as a loss. So Buchnevich was lost. Sammy Blais comes in. He's going to be a decent player. He's still 24, 25 years old. He's still fairly young, which is good. But again, he's one of those guys that you're not expecting the world out of. He's not going to probably be that superstar player. Now, the good thing is he could turn into the next Alex Tuch, especially with a guy like Gerard Gallant behind the bench. Don't be surprised if Sammy Blais definitely gets under the good favor of a guy like Gallant. He could really develop into a decent player. I think people are a little bit under on him right now, but he's had some good years in St. Louis. That could be a nice add. Barclay Gudro, one of the things I don't like that the Rangers did this offseason. Now, it's not that I don't like the player. They gave him a lot of money. And they gave him a lot of term, and they gave him a lot per year. So Barclay Gudro takes the bag, he takes the money, he gets to live in the Big Apple. A good thing there. But again, the Rangers did give him a lot of money. But again, he continues to add. You're going to see a theme here of the guys they add. They add punch and they add grit. And that's really the theme of the Rangers offseason this year. They also bring in Ryan Reeves from the Vegas Golden Knights. And everybody's like, oh, Tom Wilson will be having nightmares up until opening night when these two teams match up again. It's going to be a very interesting game once I get into the beginning of the season schedule. That is one that is going to be marked on the calendar. The New York Rangers and the Washington Capitals at Madison Square Garden, Game 1, Tom Wilson versus Ryan Reeves. That is going to be definitely very interesting. You also have Dryden Hunt, who comes in. He's been bouncing around the league for a little bit. But again, another guy that will add that little bit of sandpaper into the lineup. That was the theme of the Rangers. Now, the question is, did they compensate some of their skill to acquire that grit? That will be something that will be determined this year. But again, you look around the league in that division. Look at the New York Islanders, right? They're not the most skilled team. They're not scoring a ton of goals every game. But they have the sandpaper guys that were pushing around the Rangers' skill last year. So there is something to be said for that little bit of intangible, right? And then looking at the defense, it's pretty much the same thing. You add Patrick Nemeth from Colorado. He's another guy that's been around the league a little bit. Another good add, another sandpaper guy on your blue line. And you don't get enough of those guys. He can help with a guy like Jacob Trouba next year. And then you look at some of the young defensemen that could make training camp for the New York Rangers in that top six. You saw Keandre Miller kind of surprise people last year. They thought he was maybe going to start off the season in Hartford. So one of these guys could do the same thing this year. You have guys like Zach Jones, a former first-round pick, Niels Lundqvist, another former draft pick who's been playing in Europe, the next Lundqvist in New York, and Braden Schneider, another former first-round pick. And those guys from the WHL in the Western Hockey League, he's another one of those big bad defensemen from there. So watch out for Braden Schneider to maybe join the New York Rangers lineup this year. So those are some of the guys that the Rangers have added and lost this season. And now looking at their point producers last season, you have another season of Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, Ryan Strome, Buchnevich no longer there. Adam Fox, 47 points. He was really good for the Rangers. Chris Kreider, who was hurt. Hopefully he'll be back for a full season this year. Colin Blackwell, no longer there. You're going to need to see the emergence of these three guys in particular. Filipino, Alexis Lafreniere, and Capo Caco. You need to see those guys continue to develop this year. And Keandre Miller put up 12 points last season. Expect him to produce more, maybe a more prominent role for the Rangers next season. And you lost a couple depth guys. You lost guys like Brendan Smith, Phil DiGiuseppe. Not huge losses, but again, you filled that out with some of the guys like Reeves and Dryden Hunt, who definitely add that more of a grit to their game. Now, looking at the Rangers lineup, the forward group, you got Lafreniere, Zibanejad, and Capo Caco on the top line. Interesting that Panarin isn't there, but we'll see what happens. Panarin, Strome, and Vitaly Kravtsov are your second line. And then your bottom six is pretty much a mishmash of all these guys. You got Gudro, Hedl, Kreider, Morgan Barron, Kevin Rooney, and Sammy Blais. So that's kind of the roundabout with their bottom six. You've also got Ryan Reeves, who could be a scratch pad player that jumps into the lineup for games, I don't know, maybe against Tom Wilson. So we're going to see that also in the picture as well. Looking at the blue line, you got Ryan Lindgren and Adam Fox. They did quite well last season. They'll probably stick with that at least at the beginning of this season. And then the second pairing, you got Keandre Miller and Jacob Trouba. That worked pretty well last year. And now you have a different group with guys like Patrick Nemeth and Niels Lundqvist coming in to round out your third pair for defense. And then goaltending will be the same. As of now, it doesn't look like Georgiev will be traded. His value definitely decreased last season. He's one of those goaltenders that just is a pain in the ass against the Islanders and just really doesn't show up for the other team. So hopefully Georgiev kind of gets back on his game next season, becomes a solid 1B option behind Igor Shesterkin, who just signed that nice contract. So that's your pairing for this season. And you look at their depth. I already mentioned some of these guys. You got Morgan Barron, Brendan Ottman, who they picked up in the first round this year. Carl Henriksen, Tim Gettinger, Ty Ronning, Anthony Greco, who is a Long Island native. Maybe we'll see him jump in there. Niels Lundqvist, Braden Schneider, Hunter Skinner, Mason Geertsen, Matthew Robertson. We're going to see a couple of these guys maybe prickle into Hartford or into the NHL, at the very least during training camp. You look at the Rangers cap space, they still have over $8 million in cap space this year. So they're going to be a team that does have a little bit of flexibility. But again, believe it or not, over the next couple of years, you have guys like Caco and Alexis Lafreniere that are going to be coming off of their entry-level deals. So it's probably best that the Rangers save that cap space for when that time comes. So with that said, where do the Rangers sit going into this season? And I think this is going to be an interesting spot for the Rangers because we could see some teams that did well last year maybe fall off a little bit. I don't necessarily know if I like Pittsburgh this year. Now, again, everybody would say, well, you can't bet against Malkin and Crosby. But another season where they got bounced in the first round, those questions are going to lie for the Pittsburgh Penguins if they can get into the playoffs this year. And considering they didn't make any moves in between the pipes, which is a real concern for them last year, there is some genuine concern that maybe they miss this year. You've also got Philly, which they look a lot better, so maybe that's a team that got better. The Islanders, maybe the Rangers could be one of those teams that as an Islander fan, that's my worst nightmare, but a team that could potentially keep the Islanders out of the playoffs next year. You know, the Rangers are right there. You've got the Devils knocking at the door. I think they're still a year or two away, but they're knocking at the door, and you still have teams like Washington. So I think it's going to be difficult for the Rangers to get in, but I think they can get into the playoffs next year. It's going to come down to Gerard Gallant getting the best out of those players like Lafreniere, like Caco, and getting them to develop. And they actually have built up a lot of depth to their group with guys like Sammy Blais, who a lot of people don't like, but he's a guy that could really be that next. I keep saying Alex Tuch, but he reminds me a lot of that guy that could be Alex Tuch going into next season for the Rangers. So with that said, do the Rangers make the playoffs? I have them getting into the playoffs, but I wouldn't bet money on it with the way the East is laid out this year. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you have the New York Rangers making the playoffs in the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys next time.